What is up? We are here. Yay, finally for a Skills Pay Bills episode. Woo! Woo! You better put in like some little cheering in there. But like woo! But dude, I'm like I was so excited to basically have you on the podcast because you do so many amazing things. You're just an amazing human, and you've been working on a really, really fun project. And I know we've been on a hiatus with Skills Pay Bills, but I was like, you know what? The perfect person, because this is our lead up to the crafting network that we're gonna do.
Yes.
So this is like I just enjoy having you and chit chatting, and you're just such a great ball of information, or should I say pom pom of information.
Hey.
So uh, I wanted to basically introduce to you my friend Katie.
Hi. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I was like, what? I get to be on a podcast? That's crazy.
No, you're totally, I feel like your story and like every time that we talk and all that, I always get to know something different about you. I didn't know that you wrote a children's book, which is freaking cool.
Yeah.
Um, and you did an installation at the Children's Museum,
Yes.
and you've done installations all over the place. But the Pom Project is one of those kind of things where I was like, I got to know a little bit more about you, and so I've always been like, what else does she do? So, can you tell me a little bit about how the Pom Project started? Why pom poms and how the Pom Project got started?
Sure. Yeah. I've always been an artist. I've always been a painter, actually. I really started out as a painter and I went through my bachelor's and master's degree as a painter. And we painted from the figure 8 hours a day. And I was very much taught that like installation is a dirty word, and yarn is for craft, not fine art. And so I had really put myself into a box of like what a fine artist is allowed to do. And then I actually had started running a gallery when I came home from New York City in 2017. I came back to San Diego, Little Italy. I opened a little gallery in the front of my house, actually, and I was living in the back. And I really didn't have time to paint 8 hours a day because I was sort of putting my creative energy into curation, which is another form of art, really. I love that as well. But I started making artwork out of skeins of yarn that were just hanging around my room because I had been to a residency in Oaxaca to learn how to weave. And so, traditional weaving, crochet, knitting, I was always attracted to it, but it was a little too much like uh organization for me. Like I like to be like, here, plop this here, plop this there. So I had all these beautiful balls of yarn, and I was like, let me just take this skein of yarn and like stick it to my painting, or like, I love the whole skein of yarn just as it is. Why do I have to unwind it and put it into perfect rows of crochet or knitting? So I really was just like letting myself play, and I would do it in short increments because I didn't have time to like sit in front of an oil painting. And I truly was like hiding the work. I was embarrassed. I was hiding it in the back, and Alessandra Moctezuma walked in to see the gallery, the other artists. I was not showing my own work. I was wanting to explore other artists and give them opportunities. And networking is just something that I really love. I just love to meet the community. And it was sort of my way to meet the community, really, of San Diego art community. And so that was like 2017 to 18. And Alessandra, who runs Mesa College Art Gallery, my door was open at the end of the hallway. It was like a long hallway. And she was like, "What's down there?" And she just booked it down to my studio. And I was like, no. Like, I just was so embarrassed of my tassels and pom poms and like these weird hidden things I was making that was really just to like sustain myself. And she was like, "Oh, I like these, like let's put these." At the time they had some window displays. So I got window displays, and I guess that was like my first installation. And
That is amazing.
yeah, so from there, she gave me an art show. And in that art show, I was put together with April Rose, who's an amazingly talented artist who also does some yarn stuff, but does woodworking stuff, ceramic stuff. We ended up creating this thing I call the Chroma Temple, which was stringing yarn back and forth like a million times to make sort of like a tent shape of a rainbow. And so we were like, well, what do we do in the Chroma Temple? Do people meditate? And I was like, well, how about they make a pom pom in the Chroma Temple? So we put a little bowl with some stuff, and people could make a pom pom in the Chroma Temple.
That
And
is so
yeah,
amazing.
that's kind of how it started. It was just being playful with yarn, really.
And I think that yarn is like one of those kind of things where, you see it with like crocheting and knitting and things like that. And I think we've had this conversation before and we get really passionate and we get kind of like, let's burn this shit down because it is women's work. You know what I mean? So it's like, it doesn't allow for people to like really appreciate it or understand it because it's so it's accessible in the way that it's like your grandma had it, your mom and so then it's like people, there's a lot of shift happening with it, which I love, where all the crocheting and the knitting and all that kind of stuff is coming back. But I'm glad that Alessandra was like, hey, get out of your comfort zone. And like, I love her. She's so amazing. And there are people that could really see the true vision behind things. And I think she was perfect to basically be like, hey, Katie, we're going to do this. And you're like, oh, okay. And I love that she had this whole, that she was able to see the vision because sometimes, like, I had this conversation with someone today where they were talking about their friend that is also a textile artist, and I was like, oh my god, and they're explaining her work and all that kind of stuff, and I was like, wow, it sounds like such a cool, like, person that's making really cool things. And I was like, do they have an Instagram? And he's like, actually, um she doesn't like show any of her work anywhere, and she's an art teacher, so she's more like guarded with it. And I was like, oh, interesting. And I feel like, really just kind of like expressing it and letting everyone else see it is very inspirational, because art, I've always felt that art is like beauty, it's really like in the eye of the beholder, and it really allows for us to have like that healing journey as like kids, because I think creativity stems from like being childlike, and I feel that as we get older we kind of like start to lose that kind of energy, and society's like, no more drawing, no more painting, no more any of that stuff, get a job.
Yeah.
So and it's very like fueling to like the soul to basically be like, hey, like, what can I make? And like, seriously, like, the the whole feeling of like sitting there and like making like a pom pom and taking your time, and then at the end you have like this little fuzzy thing that like is really like, for me when I did it, I was like, this is, it makes you happy because it's like, how could you like not like a pom pom,
Right.
and
Exactly.
so I carry my pom pom maker with me in my tote. And so I
Yes.
I ran into like some yarn and I was like, I'm gonna make a little pom pom really quick. So I started like wrapping it and I made one, and it was like out of this really cool yarn, and I gave it a little haircut and I trimmed it, and I was like bouncing it up and down, and one of the students came in and they're like, wow, this is so cool. And I was like, thanks. I'm like, I just made it. And they're like, what do you mean? And I was like, yeah, my friend gave me this little like, device and you can make a pom pom. And they were like, a few of them were watching me do it and they're like, that is like the coolest thing. And I was like, yeah. And so they were just like she's like, "This is so cool." And she was like all like fascinated by the pom pom. And I was like, "It's fun, right? Doesn't it make you happy that it's like round and fluffy and just really cool?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Would you like to keep it?" And she's like, "Yeah." And you could see her walking out, just kind of like bouncing it. And I was like, "Yeah." And so it does make you feel some kind of way, you know? And I feel like because of like the shape and all that, it is very like, I don't know, you can't be mad making a pom
Right?
pom.
You can't. I think that's why I love pom poms. It's inclusive because almost anyone can make a pom pom, and I feel like pom pom joy comes out of everyone when they make it. Even the ones who are like, no, I don't want to make one, and then I get them to make one. They're like, yeah, you know. I've made them with all ages, all genders. Like it really doesn't matter. I People are like, "What is it?" I'm like, "I don't know. It's pom pom joy." Like when you pop that thing open, you're right. There's no way to be upset about it.
Yeah.
And it's simple. It's also, I think, meditative. Like it helps a lot of people calm themselves because there's that wrapping aspect to it. There's like all parts of it are kind of ASMR, like, you know,
Yeah.
the cutting part, the tie it and you feel it slide through the plastic. And then when you pop it open, then you have this thing that you can like, is tangible, it's soft, it's joyful, and it can become a lot of things. But when you put a lot of them together, it like really transforms a pom pom into something else. You know, I think traditionally pom poms were probably used like tassels on blankets or scarves or things like that in the beginning, is what I imagine. And then from there, people have gotten more creative. But I really like to mix the pom pom community aspect together, not just making pom poms alone in your house, which is also great. And I recommend it, especially with a little Netflix. But if you're in a group of people, and this also just all unfolded like as I was doing it, that I noticed people who were strangers sat down next to each other, and by the end of it they were friends. They were exchanging numbers, they were exchanging ideas, they felt more comfortable talking because they were doing something with their hands.
Yes.
Yeah, all of that. Like it showed me like I'm not, you know, that like I didn't know all of this. In fact, like I said, I was embarrassed and I was like, oh, what are my grad school friends gonna think that I'm like making pom poms now? But it also ended up merging the two most important things for me, which is art and activism. Because you can string pom poms into a colorful anything, or you can make a pride flag, you can make a women's symbol, you can make a Planned Parenthood symbol, and then it becomes activism, you
Yep.
know? And that's like a next level thing, you know?
Exactly. And I love um basically your manifesto, your crafting manifesto that you have, that you basically explain all that kind of stuff, and where it is taking something that you're like, hey, people might see it as like this one thing, but then you're taking it to that next level in like really creating something that you're going to be able to basically say, hey, I'm making a statement with that, which is freaking awesome. And I think that that is art, is basically creating some kind of statement with something that you typically wouldn't think that you could make a statement out of. And like pom pom is like a great thing for that.
Totally. I give the credit of learning about craftivism to working at the Women's Museum, which is why like everything I do informs everything else I do, which is also how I met you, right? I invited you to show at the Women's Museum. And craftivism was coined by Betsy Greer in 2003. It's not my idea. And she basically says, you know, you can make activism out of anything using your creativity. You don't have to necessarily march through the streets, but that's great if you want to and can. But there's a lot of ways to be an activist. Typically, with craftivism, it's based in sewing or embroidery or crochet or any of what's typically known as women's work from the past. So
Nice.
That's really like the basis of craftivism, is that, merging craft and activism together to share your message with the world. And to me, that just hit like perfectly. And I didn't even really realize that's what I was doing. And then I was like, oh yeah, I made a pride flag. Like, that's absolutely activism with pom poms. And so once it like clicked in my brain a couple years later, I,
It
I
was marinating. It was
it was
marinating. So
marinating, yeah. And then, and that I was standing in the Women's Museum. The reason we chose a textile exhibit is because we did a pom pom project with the women's symbol hanging from the facade of the building. So that's another form of craftivism, right? There it is, exactly. So to me, I
which
like that's just the most beautiful marrying of the two most important things that I really like care about as a human being.
I love that. And you know what? I remember walking up to the Women's Museum when it was at the Jacob Center and like just seeing your installation and being like, what the it was just so visually like striking because you how many pom-poms were there, do you know?
I think
Because it
about
was a lot.
2000. We worked on that one for, I think, like 8 months of pom pom parties. And people did it at their church groups, they did them at home, and then we also hosted a bunch of pom pom parties. So
That's
that
really
one,
cool.
I'm bad at numbers, I'm bad at counting, but it was a lot. It was probably the most we've ever made. Yeah.
That's really
And
cool, and I
all
remember
pink.
seeing it and just being like, "That is so amazing." So amazing to see something like that, and you're just, like, walking up to it, and you're like, "This is so freaking cool." So I remember seeing that, and I was like, "Okay, I'm so down for this right now for whatever it is." So, the Pom Pom Project, how did that start?
So after the Mesa College thing happened, we tied those on the
Katie?
fence. I'm here.
Oh no. Oh no.
Can you hear me? Hello.
I can hear you.
We're back.
You're a little delayed though, Claudia. It's okay.
I'm always very delayed. I'm always very delayed. Before we talk about the Pom Pom Project, I just wanted to say, because I know we jumped into another thing, I think that community building through like the Pom Pom Project, crafts like that, where you're like sitting around and you're working with your hands, that is so true what you were saying about it, because we it is community building when you're like sitting around and you're having like these conversations and you're getting to know like someone that maybe you would have never like got into like chit chat before, but it's like you're in this setting where it's like everyone has, some things in common, where it's like you all are into like art or creating things or doing any of that kind of stuff. And so for me, like when you were talking about that, I was like, oh my god, that is so true. And I think that that makes what you do even more powerful, because it's like you're really having like this engagement with like the community and like people that like really want to like make impacts in their community by you know going and helping with like an installation, or you know um just creating and wanting to be a part of something. So I think we need more things like that. We need more things where we could feel safe and basically validated and seen and a part of something, because I feel like that is like the true connection that we all like strive for. So in that way, it's like I love what you're doing with like the community building part of that.
Important. And again, I was taught like you have to be alone in your studio to become a successful artist. And at the end of the day, the museums were calling for community projects, the Pom Pom Project. So, to answer your question, Mesa, we're making pom poms. We decide, okay, we'll string them on the fence. And it ends up becoming this gorgeous thing on the fence. And then the Oceanside Museum of Art called, and so 2019 is when it started, and then right before the pandemic. and they said, can you do something with pom poms on a larger scale? We love this idea of doing community pom pom meetings. Can you do it together with groups? Can we do something colorful for the Pride Festival? So I said yes, absolutely. And then the pandemic hit. And I was like, oh no, we can't do a community project in the pandemic, but it turns out you can. You can because you just luckily pom pom makers are lightweight yarn, scissors. That's all you need. So people picked up kits. And then we did this. We did Zoom meetings. Oceanside. Okay, first of all, I did live in Oceanside and I do love it. My mom lives there. My sister lives there. We're North County folk. Okay, but so long story short, long story long, actually, we are at Mesa College. We make pom poms. We string them to the fence outside, and we're like, oh my God, this is gorgeous. It's an art installation. Then Oceanside Museum calls, and they're like, we want to do something for Pride. We love your pom poms. Can we do pom pom parties? I say yes. We're going to like string them down the whole road at that point. Then Mr. Pandemic hits, and we're like, no communities together, everyone must be alone. But luckily we have things like this, virtual meetings. So we pivoted. We did take home kits. People met in Zoom parties, and the LGBTQ Community Center helped run a lot of those. And we made pom poms together. And again, it was one of those moments where people needed it. It gave people something to do with their hands. They were working together for a common good, for Pride Festival. We started realizing there might not be a Pride Festival. Actually, this isn't 3 weeks, this is 3 years. And so we collected over 1,000 pom-poms, and instead I strung them into a 25-foot long pride flag that we then dangled from the ceiling of the facade of Oceanside Museum. And this thing was gorgeous, and it was monumental, and it was made by hundreds of people.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
And then they filmed the Pride Zoom thing instead in front of the Pride flag instead of doing a parade, because they couldn't obviously do a parade, peak pandemic. So, it's activism, it's community, it's fine art, it's at a museum. It was everything I wanted in my work.
Isn't that like so funny that like we always have this idea of what we would want it to be, and we kind of like try to fit into like this like mold of like what an artist should be. And it's like I'm just so fascinated with you because we've talked about it before where how do people like respond to like pom poms, and how are people, a lot of people are like, well, it's just yarn and this thing, but it's like you've taken it to like that next level of like true fucking skills pay bills, where you're and it is one of those things where it's like that's why I'm like so careful with like the wording of like craft and art and creating and things like that, because it's like a lot of people like they're like it's not a craft, because it kind of like in some ways people say that crafting devalues art and things like that. So for me, I'm like, you know everything that you've done with like pom poms, the pom pom project, everything like that, I'm like, whoa, like you really took it to that next level.
Literally, skills pay bills. Okay. Woo!
But you know what? It's so awesome. And like I was saying, I'm like so fascinated with the whole entire project, you, all that kind of stuff, because you've really taken it to the next level. And so for me, like having someone in like my life that I could see where it's like they started with something that they were so kind of like, scared to show everyone. And then all of a sudden it's like this whole entire thing. And like awesome thing about that is that you can now walk anywhere and be like, Pom Pom, I know who that was. You know what I mean? So it's like that's like truly like the awesome part about it is that you really change the narrative of how people are seeing like a pom pom, which is like insane.
That's
you know?
true. I never thought of that. Thank you so much. Like, I feel really honored to be the facilitator of this project. And it really came from, like, I know it sounds corny. People say follow your bliss, but literally follow your bliss. Because if you're following that excitement and you're just taking that ride, and you have to trust the process, but it will take you on a ride. It meant, like, I didn't know that this is how I would get here. It definitely showed up completely different for me, but I always followed the excitement and, the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and said a lot of yeses, and had hard experiences along the way too, for sure. Like, I had never been in a 36-foot lift before. No, terrifying. And then it went to a 60-foot lift. And then I was like, all right, I'm going to hire someone next time, because that was crazy.
And you know what? Like I love that you've done all these installations and have written a kid's book. You've done like so many different things. Where if for the Pompom Project, how many community events did you have for that?
Okay, so this recent one was so exciting because it was the first time I ever won a grant. And I won an individual artist grant called Far South Border North, which was provided by San Diego Arts and Culture. So props to them for putting the money directly in the artist's hands. That, number one, is huge for cities to recognize that money should flow to the artists so that they can do their work, and also trusting them to create programs that they can do in the city. And so I today actually just finished the 8th community pom-pom workshop, which has culminated in, I want to say, like, definitely over 1,000 pom-poms. We're gonna do like a fun snow angel thing in those pom-poms. We got to have a video of that. And we're gonna put them up here at So Loca, which I'm really excited about.
Me too.
So Casa Familiar runs several apartment complexes for older adults, including Via Merced. They have a gorgeous community room. So I really wanted to do something for people in San Isidro and people in Barrio Logan, because it's all about the community and beautifying spaces that, really might not have the opportunity to get that kind of work otherwise. So I really appreciate that grant came about, that I was applying for grants it's a job. It takes writing and all that hard stuff, but you'd be surprised how much money is available if you tap into it. And I think that is a big takeaway of what I do, is like, there's funding for programs like this all over, in museums, hospitals, libraries, schools, community settings, city funded by the city. You just have to find those and take the time to sit on your computer and do some of that work as well. And that is a big part of being an artist, right? It's not just making. There's a lot of business to this as well. Marketing, storytelling is what we're doing right now, which is probably the biggest part of it. Like you said, that person wasn't sharing their work. I think sharing your work helps you connect with people, helps you connect with people in a way that you wouldn't have otherwise if you didn't share your truest self. And that is what we need as human beings, is to be able to connect to each other in that way. And like you said before, when they see someone being brave, then it allows them to be brave.
Exactly. Because I know that with, like, the vulnerability of, like, this is my art, and like it's on display for people to judge and all that kind of stuff. And so I think that that's like the intimidating part. But it's also one of those things where it's like, it inspires people, your whole journey, your whole mission, everything, like the community projects, all that kind of stuff. It's inspired. It's truly, it's inspired me. And I know it inspires a lot of other people. And I know we've met so many cool people through like the Pompom Project, you know. And so for me, I'm like, this is like such an amazing resource for us to have in like communities. And I'm really glad that there are grants that are wanting to support projects like that, because it's so crucial in our communities for us to be able to have like these circles, right, where we're basically having conversations. And sometimes it's getting to know someone that you didn't know and like seeing their point of view about things and understanding and being a little bit more compassionate. And I do think that um being being able to provide grants for artists and community members that are doing things like that, it's so crucial for our communities. So I'm glad that there are grants that are supporting, you know, projects like this. And I remember you've shared a few grants with me where, you know, as an artist, sometimes you're kind of like, you know, how do you navigate, you know, a grant, and how do you do all that kind of stuff? And I remember you were one of the first people that you were like, you should look into grants. And I was like, what is that? You know, and so it is. I'm like, what is that? You know, but it's like you've been such a like a like such a great person to like share those kind of things and open our eyes into to like grants, you know. And you gladly, like, you're like, apply for this, you know, do this. And I'm like, oh shit, that is so awesome to be able to have someone that, you know, is sharing resources with other people, because it is opening up the doors for maybe someone that doesn't understand or has never applied to a grant. It's awesome that you've done that, you know, for us. And I'm sure you do that for a bunch of other people. So um, we need to keep funding projects like this, because, you know, people that have like the right intentions of building community, changing narrative of things, and creating like value in an artist that it is a brown woman artist. And we need to value that more, because guess what, like the only people that could really tell our stories is ourselves. And we need to basically be able to strengthen that movement of like supporting brown women artists and entrepreneurs, because representation in our communities matter, you know. And I know when I was growing up, there wasn't people that like looked like me in like places like that. So I could never imagine myself. And so for me, I'm like, wow, like there's a lot of amazing women that are out there that are doing really cool stuff, that are doing it with like amazing intention. And you're one of those people. So it feels really cool to see the journey and to support the journey and to do all that kind of stuff. And so it's just been awesome, just kind of making pom poms, throwing them, creating our crafting network channel, all that kind of stuff. So it's awesome. And I want more people to support this. So if there's any other grants anyone wants to send over, we will gladly apply to them. Send money now.
You've been a huge inspiration as a community builder as well, you know, like I remember watching you do your thing, just do your thing and making, you could have been alone the whole time not sharing what you were doing, but you weren't. You were building community projects, you were doing events, you're still doing events, connecting with spaces that wouldn't have found you if you hadn't sought them out, getting sponsors. Like, come on, all this stuff is mega. Like, that event you did at Bread and Salt, massive. And inviting other artists to show their work here at So Loca as well. You know, all of that has been, I watch people just like fall in love with you. They're like, you know, groupies. You have groupies. Because
Roadies.
it's true. I mean, in the street, people like say your name. They're like, "Do you know So Loca? Oh, I know her. Oh, I have a So Loca jacket." You know, it's like a, if you're wearing a So Loca item, it's like a,
You're like, I have a solo jacket
and a tote and a sweatshirt. I'm turning 40 next month, And honestly, I'm so excited. Like, hell yeah. It feels so good to be 40 because you really just don't give a fuck. You're like, I am what I am, take it or leave it. I'll be soaking in a hot springs. Like,
That's what I'm talking about. I'll be 38 this 39 this year, so I'm right behind you. And you know what? Like I feel like I I'm not like a person where I'm like, "Oh my god, I'm like gonna turn this and I haven't done anything with my life or anything like that." I'm more like, "Wow, like what a privilege to be able to get older, and
we're
to just
alive.
yeah. And it's like, I think everyone thinks I'm like this wise little old lady because I have gray hair. So people are usually like, "What should I do?" And I'm like, "I don't know."
Oh, no,
But
because people do look up to you because you're doing the thing that they want to do, like be brave enough to just go do it. Go do the thing,
at the
whatever
same,
the thing is.
which at the same time, I'm like, maybe I don't know, like just don't be scared. But at the same time, it's like maybe that's like not a good thing. Because for me, I'm like, fuck it, let's just do it and we'll see what happens. Which is crazy, but
That's how
you
it
know.
has to be. You're
Yeah.
so right.
Fear is like, I mean, we could think about a million different excuses of like why we can't do something, but um you know what about like thinking about like a million different reasons of why you should do something, is also like, a good way of seeing things, but it it is what it is, but yeah. I think be brave enough to do whatever it is that makes you feel happy. And I feel like you talking about, how you were like, dude, I've always wanted to do all these things in like my practice, and you're doing it, and it's like, and it I feel like it's definitely been like your purpose because you're going from one thing to another thing to another thing to another thing, and everything keeps on opening up for you. So I think it was meant to be the way that it's been working out. So it's awesome. I love it, Katie. Have you within like your whole entire career or anything like that, um I feel like we don't ever talk about like hardships or any of that kind of stuff because it isn't like pretty to like talk about or anything like that. And mainly on Instagram, it's like all you're seeing is like pictures like this. And so it's like you're not sharing like, something that you're actually like the struggles of like being like, a woman that's a brown woman as like an artist. And so I feel like we just see like a very curated version of people on Instagram and social medias. And so have you had like, hardships that you've just kind of been like, what is happening right now?
So many, so many. And yeah, I actually, yeah, it's really important to talk about your failures, your shortcomings, or just admit that I'm not good at everything. And, like finally being able to outsource a little bit is awesome too as you grow. But, my email is full of rejection letters of people who said, no, we don't want to show your work. I would say like for every 9 rejection letters, I would get a yes, we do want to show your work. Same with the grants. Like, yeah, I won one. How many grants have I applied to? I don't even know. A bunch. And it took a lot of time, but then it ended up paying off in that way. So, yeah, you have to be okay with failing. You have to be okay with messing up. Not every Pompom project, in fact, none of them came out how I thought they would exactly, but I learned from each one, and then the next one got a little better, and then the next one got a little better. The first Pompom project, I didn't know how to string together 1,000 pom poms. So is it perfect? No. Is it beautiful? Yes. And um those rejection letters, they do hurt. No one likes to be told like, oh, we don't want to show your art in our gallery. Sometimes it hurts my feelings a little, but you have to get over it and keep going and just accept that the work that I make is not for everyone, but the people that it is for are going to be changed by it, right? So
Yeah.
it's my job to do that and keep putting myself out there for that exact reason. And the hard thing is, like, when you do put yourself out there, there's, sometimes trolls, people telling you your work is bad or stupid or like whatever, or people who even steal your ideas and your concepts. And that one is really hard for me. Um, and it's happened in different ways. And so I think, like, along the way, I've also had to learn how to protect my intellectual property, or in fact get really good at making contracts was something that I've worked really hard on. Like, people I work with, hey, let's have a contract, let's know what our scope of work is, what are you responsible for, what am I responsible for, and not taking it personally, but like, this is business also. I need to protect myself, you need to protect yourself. So I'm actually really big on contracts these days, because I think it just lays out what we're doing, what it clears up any muddy waters before a project starts, so that when you get into the project, you don't run into a big whoopsie, and those contracts are easy to find online. You don't have to rewrite the book, they're online for free. There's even a website, it's artistcontracts.com, and you can download specific contracts for your business. Say you're going to go work with a school, you should have a contract. You're going to go work with another art nonprofit, you should have a contract. You're going to hire someone as an apprentice, you should have a contract, so they can't, copy basically what you do and go do it outside of that, things like that. So all of those contracts, like, I do not like paperwork, I don't like that kind of stuff, but it is so much better than having big problems and fights later on, because things that you would never think of come up when you're collaborating with people, like things you would never think of. I'm trying to think of an example, but
I think you're so right with like the contracts. Like I'm very much a person where I'm like, okay, what is your expectation of what would you like for me to like basically add into like this collaboration, and having expectations where it's like, what's your expectation of me? What's my expectation of you? And like being like ultra clear with that is like super important to me, because it allows for there not to be that weird, awkward, like, wait, what? Who's doing what? Like, what is happening, you know? And so in that way, it's like awesome because, I think collaborative things can sometimes, um, be something where it's like you're kind of having to like read someone's mind, and it's like that's very hard. So being able to have it like all like basically written out, where you're like, hey, this is what I expect of you and this is what I'm expecting, vice versa, all that, it allows for there to be like clear communication. And for me, like I love clear communication, so like that it's not like, oh shit, like we're gonna all end up resenting each other for not communicating. So I love that, and thank you for sharing that website, because it really allows for anyone to basically be able to access that, and just especially like as an artist, like a lot of the times you kind of think like, well, I'm working on this project, but someone basically like took this project from me, like what are like my rights and how can I like move forward and things like that. So
another important like part of being a person who's a teacher, you're out like ta-da 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 on stage, you also have an equal amount of recovery time. I take care of myself, I meditate, I eat well, I spend time on my contracts, like covering myself in a lot of ways so that I don't end up like with a thrown out back.
but yes, I think it's definitely like important to like just really, after doing all the teaching and all that kind of stuff, to really just allow your brain and everything else to kind of like slow down a little bit. Self-care.
Say no when a no is resonating within you, like I was taught like you have to be a yes person to succeed, and that doesn't resonate with me anymore either. And I think it's, if a project is not in alignment with your vision, and if it's not a good fit, or if, they can't pay you, it's okay to say no. It's okay to say no to certain projects. And usually it's like a body check in. I'm like, ooh, do I feel nauseous? Because if I feel nauseous, it's a no. And sometimes it's taken projects that I went through, even though I knew I shouldn't have, to learn that it's okay not to say yes to everything. But when you are in a good yes and you're following that like real excitement, and it's in alignment with your vision, then you're just like, whoo, you have the energy to do it.
Exactly. It's fuel.
It
It's
is.
fuel. I love that. I love that. I'm glad that you came, you hung out with us, and we talked about all things pom poms. And I'm excited for the installation to go up at the studio. And I'm just excited to keep seeing the Katie growth. Go, Katie. Go, Katie.
Excited to see your growth and your next projects and what you're doing. I know, you're always up to big things, and I'm so glad that we got to sort of merge our textile worlds on this one.
It's going to be many more.
More to come.
More to come.
Pom poms are going to live here in So Loca.
They live forever. Hey, if someone wants to follow you or find you or any of that kind of stuff, where can we do that?
I am on Instagram, and my website are the Pompom Project.org or the Pompom Project.org on Instagram. And then my personal art is KatieRuizArt.com or Katie Ruiz Art on Instagram. Those are the best ways to find me. And yeah, I'm always on Instagram. So, you can shoot me a message, find me, follow me, share your stuff with me too. I'd love to see what other specifically textile people and also painters. I love all things art,
Yeah.
It's all part of this like really important work that we do.
Woohoo! Go, Katie.
Go Claudia.
Go, Katie. Go, us. High five. High five. Hey, thank you. I will see you soon.
I'll see you soon.
Yeah.
Like in 2 seconds.
I know, yeah. I'll be in there.
We are going to have like a really fun party for the Pom Pom installation So Loca collaboration in May.
Collab.
Dates to be announced.
Oh, watch out. We might debut a video of our crafting channel, so
we really should have a YouTube channel.
We're gonna. We keep talking about it.
But it would be epic. Stop making ideas. Pause.
Thanks, Katie, for coming on to the podcast.
Okay. Yeah. Bye.